Hi, I'm Christine and I'm back with another video. If you're new to my channel, which would be perfectly understandable because it's brand new and this is only my fourth video, and you're not familiar with any of my previous work connected to this character, I should briefly mention that I'm probably best known in the Daredevil fandom for my website, theothermurdochpapers.com, that I launched in late 2007, which is now like almost 18 years ago, which is pretty insane. While I've enjoyed documenting pretty much everything to do with this character, a particular interest of mine for many years now has been sort of analyzing his heightened senses and doing sort of deep dives into how that would work and how it would come up against sort of real world complications. And so a few days ago, I posted a video that I'll link in the description that details some of the things that I just love about Daredevil Born Again so far, as it relates to these areas that I care about. Since I made that video, episode 4 came out, and I wanted to just point to this one scene, really two connected scenes, that really bring home what it is I mean when I talk about great senses writing. And if you're wondering what kind of expertise I bring to this this particular analysis, it's probably the case that there are very few people on the planet who have spent more time thinking about Daredevil senses than I have. And I'm not saying that to brag, because I'm not at all sure that's something a normal person would brag about, but it's been, like I said, a huge interest of mine for many, many years. I have a science background myself and enjoy sort of analyzing both, sensory science and physics and how it all ties together. So if you're the least bit interested in anything I have to say on this topic, I would suggest you check out my book that I wrote 3 years ago, Being Matt Murdock, One Fan's Journey into the Science of Daredevil. I've got everything lined up here, and we're just gonna hit play, and we're gonna look at the scene where Matt, in episode 4, goes looking for that metal casing from the shooting of Hector Ayala at the end of episode 3. So let's get that going.
Projectile.
Not recovered.
9mm to the temple, execution style. Single kill shot at extreme close range, and no one found the casing.
And I think we're going to just first make a brief stop right here, because I actually have a preferred read on this situation with a small glass bottle. And it's not the case that I don't think it's possible for him to have found that bottle without this particular theory that I'm going to advance, because it is a large enough object that, especially, imagining that he hears maybe up to, say, 35,000 hertz instead of 20,000 or something like that, which would be another octave above the human hearing range. If he's got that to sort of fuel his echolocation ability, my by far preferred theory for how Daredevil senses things, and I think also the main one in at least the last couple of seasons of the previous show and also this show, that it is not far-fetched that he would notice an object of that size. However, even for regular people, we don't see equally well throughout our visual field, and small details are easily missed. And I think even in his situation, how I read this particular scenario is that the bottle cap that was kind of moving past him down the slope not only planted the idea that, like, oh wait, things rolled downhill here, which is also a nice trick, but it also, the sound of that would have actually helped sort of get some high frequency sounds near him and near that object, and that the reflections off of that would enable him to more easily detect that bottle or just have his attention drawn in that direction. So even though that's not strictly needed, I do actually see the added detail of the bottle cap as being just one of the things that makes this scene really great. And now that Matt's decided to knock that over, let's see what happens. And let's make another stop here. I actually would have preferred him to sort of actually feel around for that, for the metal casing. I think that not because he's blind, but because that's what sort of any person would do. I do find it slightly unrealistic that he's just reaching for it, like grabbing it exactly. However, I do think there's some room for him actually hearing, like, I don't know if that's what that sound's supposed to indicate, but there was a sound, like a later sound from the bottle, that sound may have actually indicated the bottle hitting the metal casing, in which case it gets 2 thumbs up approval for me. But I do think, as I mentioned before, that sometimes creators are a little bit afraid to have him use his sense of touch in certain ways. So far in this new show with these 4 episodes, I think that's been handled great, and you could look back to my other video to see my me expound on some of that. But aside from that, just minor quibble, I think this is a fantastic scene, and there's more stuff coming, so let's have a look at that. So he smells it, and he rubs his fingers or his thumb against what turns out to be like an etched Punisher logo, which again, perfect. On the one hand, it seems so obvious that you would need a sequence of discoveries, events, exploration to explain how he does this, but unfortunately, a lot of times, that's not been something I've come to expect, to put it that way. There are some points I want to make too about what happens when he goes to find Frank, which comes right after this. So let's have a look at that too. And I'm going to cut it off right before he goes in to see Frank. I think what's nicely done here, and this was something I was kind of wondering about going into this episode, because we knew that Frank was going to appear. This was likely going to be the big scene where they meet. And I was wondering, how's he going to know that Frank is hiding out there? I was worried there was going to be some kind of illogical, like, sensing stuff from like blocks away, but it looks like they've been kind of keeping tabs on each other. So this is not Matt's first visit to Frank. However, what I find interesting is that, and you notice this more if you have the captions on, that they're first drawing attention to the sound of the electricity kind of crackling, and then there's also the sound of the water that's just sort of overhead right before Matt goes in to see Frank. And one thing I've been sort of talking a little bit about, actually mostly in my book, maybe not so much on my website, is the idea that more so than heightening sort of Matt's senses to extreme reaches, which is kind of harder to explain physically, one thing that heightened hearing would really help you with in real life would be to like expand your hearing range, and also to expand sort of your ability to hear within the human hearing range, but for sounds where the human hearing threshold in real life would be very high. So one idea I've always had is that Matt would be very well equipped to hear, for instance, the rumbling of the subway. That's the kind of thing that I would just imagine. It's a sound that travels pretty easily through structures. And even though all humans are capable of being super annoyed by low frequency sounds, we also do have a pretty high hearing threshold for very low frequency sounds. And if you lower that a bit, you would hear much more, and that would be sort of helpful. And also, of course, in the upper range, where you do have maybe that sort of crackling of electricity, and there are other sounds that would sort of become audible simply because you expand the hearing range outside of what a normal human could hear, but where we could very easily imagine that a dog could hear this, or Matt Murdock could hear this. And what I think that does for him is sort of like, instead of sort of reading the signs, which he can't, for him, it's like, oh, I mean, if he hasn't been there for a while, like, oh, yeah, Frank is behind the door that's like right next to where there's the water sound. So I always sort of imagine that certain sounds would be beneficial to him as just sort of signposts, or like landmarks, really, along his route. So I thought this was very nicely done. And if you want to see more Frank, you're going to have to go back to the episode, because I'm going to end the recording here. But I do appreciate that they had sort of like the Punisher logo was an etched logo, which would make sense that he could feel. Everything here is very logical. Like, they're not making sort of any assumptions that are left unexplained to the viewer. And it's a very nice sequence of events. I'm thrilled so far that the creators have given more thought to this than I expected going in. This scene, like the first portion of the scene in particular, shows you how you can do this and how you can use this character and his heightened senses to their best effect without sort of, you know, invoking absurdities of one kind or another. I mean, I, of course, love the general just story and narrative and characterizations and all of that, but the senses writing, better than anything I have ever seen in the comics or the previous show. Stellar. Thank you so much. So that said, check out for whenever I post a new video, and also do check out my website, where I also post reviews of the episodes coming out. See you later.